How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Subtrendy's newest show, What's Up With. I'm your host, Andrew Cogswell, and I'm here to tell you about the history, lore, and much more of all the games, comics, movies, and TV shows you want to hear about. Now, as the time of this video going up, we are just a few days away from Marvel's Doctor Strange hitting the big screen. That's right, this Friday, the Sorcerer Supreme is finally coming to the Marvel Cinematic Universe after being teased back in Captain America Winter Soldier almost 2 years ago, which in comic book times is like 40 movies or so. In order to prepare you for the good doctor's unveiling, this video is going to provide a brief history lesson about Marvel's Master of the Mystic Arts. We're going to talk about his origin, some of his comic book adventures, some of his powers and abilities, and of course, what he's going to do in the MCU. Now, it's important to remember that some of the information presented in this video, while comic canon, might not translate to the film, so just keep that in mind. Stephen Strange made his debut all the way back in 1963. To kind of put that in perspective, let's look at some of the other heroes that kind of came out around the same time as him. Fantastic Four, 1961. Ant-Man, the Hulk, Thor, and Spider-Man, all in 1962. And Iron Man just 4 months before Doctor Strange in 1963. Those are some of Marvel's heaviest hitters, and they all came out right before Doctor Strange. What's even crazier, when Doctor Strange first debuted, the Avengers and X-Men weren't even around yet. First appearing in Strange Tales number 110. Get it? Strange Tales, Doctor Strange, probably figure out where the name comes from. Doctor Strange was originally pitched by legendary artist Steve Ditko to Stan Lee. Now, Lee and Ditko had previously collaborated on one other little character, Spider-Man. This resulted not only in Spider-Man himself, but also Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Sandman, and the Lizard. So while their partnership wasn't as extensive as Lee's and other Marvel artist Jack Kirby, it was definitely nothing to scoff at. So Ditko pitches this idea of a black magic superhero to Stan Lee for a 5-page filler story that he had already written and drawn. Stan Lee must have liked it because it gets put into Strange Tales number 110 alongside a Human Torch side story. Marvel must have seen some potential in the Good Doctor because he appeared again in Strange Tales 111, 114, and then finally got his origin story in 115. The release of Doctor Strange really couldn't have come at a better time for Marvel. With all the psychedelic art and concepts being brought forth, it was really popular with college students at the time, who were mostly a part of the counterculture movement in the US. This included a lot of drug use and interest in the idea of mysticism. So for college kids in the counterculture movement, this was some match made in like some weird other dimensional heaven. Now that we've gotten the Doctor's creation out of the way, let's talk about Stephen Strange himself. Like most superheroes, Stephen wasn't born with these powers. He had to earn them. Actually, for most of his life, Stephen wasn't even really a good person. He was kind of an egotistical asshole. Originally, he was a surgeon, a well-respected and very wealthy surgeon who was very confident in his abilities and whose material life really dictated who he was as a person. Honestly, if you think about it, he sounds a lot like his Avengers teammate, Tony Stark. However, that all changed when Stephen was involved in a really bad car accident that left the nerves in his hands severely damaged. When he woke up, the nerves were so badly damaged he couldn't do surgery anymore. So despite being offered consultation positions at hospitals, the dude was so prideful he shot them all down. So he gets out of the hospital, blows most of his money, sells most of his possessions, and attempts all these different experimental surgeries and medical practices that aren't super valid. However, nothing works. Defeated and almost broke, he sells the last of his possessions in a last-ditch attempt to go get healed. He hears about the Ancient One, a mystical, legendary figure somewhere in Tibet that lives in a palace that can heal anyone. So Stephen books a one-way trip. Now, Stephen shows up in Tibet and finds the Ancient One's palace, but when he approaches the Ancient One to ask him to heal him, the Ancient One refuses. It probably doesn't help that in true Stephen Strange fashion, he just shows up and starts making demands of this guy. He shows up at a house and is like, hey, heal me. And the Ancient One's like, why? Why should I? You're mean. You're rude. So how's the most powerful magician in the world deal with somebody acting out and coming into his house and bossing around? He kicks his ass with a little bit of magic. He lifts Stephen up and twirls him around and puts him back on the ground, and Stephen's just like, oh, parlor tricks, like, that's not magic. Science is the way. So, unfortunately for the Ancient One, Stephen shows up right before a really bad snowstorm hits outside the palace. So he's got to play host to this asshole who just showed up on his doorstep demanding cures to his broken hands. So Stephen hangs out for a little while and just kind of does his thing wandering around the palace. While he's there, the Ancient One's pupil Baron Mordo attempts a coup on the Ancient One and tries to kill him. Stephen sees all this, but can't warn the Ancient One due to some magic that Baron Mordo casts. However, the Ancient One knew about Baron Mordo's treachery the whole time, and instead of letting him out in the world and kicking him out of his palace, he wants to keep him close because he knows he's dangerous. The Ancient One defeats Baron Mordo, who doesn't actually reveal that it was him, it's just kind of a magical entity that attacks the Ancient One. So Baron Mordo has no idea the Ancient One knows. Stephen Strange sees all this, sees the Ancient One's great power and his magical abilities, says, please, I want to be your pupil. I want to help. I want to learn how to do what you do. And the Ancient One says, that's fine, but like, you do realize you're gonna have to do some good with this, and like, when I'm gone, you're gonna have to defend the world from people like Baron Mordo. And Doctor Strange is like, cool, I'll do it, I don't care. The Ancient One hears this and looks at Stephen and says, this is the first time you've ever been selfless. Like, good job, you're a decent human being for once. Sure, you can be my pupil. And so, Stephen starts training to be a wizard. So Stephen studies under the Ancient One for years, learning spells and abilities from the Ancient One, and at some point, Baron Mordo pieces out and he goes off on his own little thing, and the Ancient One lets him, and Stephen finishes his training for a few years. He eventually flies back to America and sets up shop in New York in Greenwich Village, and acts as a consultant for different groups. Along with him comes Wong, his personal housekeeper kind of person, assistant, who comes from a long line of families who served the Ancient One. In those early years, Stephen Strange is going to encounter some of his deadliest villains and his most famous villains, including Baron Mordo, who he met very early on. He's going to meet Dormammu, he's going to meet Bottle Imp, and he's going to meet Nightmare. While Stephen encountered all these villains really early on in his career, he also made a lot of friends with other superheroes. At one point, he's attacked by Loki, who is using his illusions to try to get Stephen to kill Thor, but Thor and Strange work together to break Loki's illusion, and they team up and fight him and defeat Loki. Even non-magic heroes like Spider-Man end up becoming friends with Doctor Strange after they work together to free some citizens from an extra-dimensional rift. Spider-Man wants Stephen Strange to wipe all their memories so they don't remember the horrors that happened, but Stephen says, well, they'd forget that you helped them, and Spidey's like, I don't care, that's not what matters. And Stephen Strange was really impressed by that. I was like, hey man, not bad, let's hang out. So they team up a lot later on. They've been doing it for years. The most important interaction Stephen would have in his early career is against his greatest foe, Dormammu. Dormammu is the ruler of the Dark Dimension and is an old rival of the Ancient One who attempted to invade Earth when he felt the Ancient One's power slipping. In order to invade Earth, Dormammu challenges Doctor Strange to a duel in the Dark Dimension. Before it starts, Dormammu's niece, Clea, comes out and is like, hey, this is a bad idea, Dormammu, because if you get too weak, you can't protect the Dark Dimension from invaders. And despite being really good advice, Stephen Strange and Dormammu were like, let's go. So they throw down. Strange was able to hold his own enough to where he lowered Dormammu's power to where the barriers that protected the Dark Dimension were starting to weaken, and the Nameless Ones, the Dark Dimension's foes, could come in and start invading. They realized what was happening, and so they stopped their fight, and Stephen Strange lent enough power to Dormammu to reestablish the barriers and defeat the Nameless Ones. Which is great for the Dark Dimension, but Dormammu was kind of a little hurt, so Stephen Strange, this weakling, had to help him. So, out of mercy, he said, I won't kill you because you did help, but I'm gonna hate you forever. And Stephen's like, I guess, okay. But hey, your niece, I really like her, can she be okay? And like, don't hurt her either, because Clea eventually would become Doctor Strange's wife. So the dude is married to his greatest foe's niece. That's gotta be the most awkward family gathering possible. After fighting Dormammu, Stephen helped out around New York, helping different teams, Fantastic Four, X-Men, Avengers, and eventually actually joined the Defenders for a while. Now, up to this point, the Ancient One is still the Sorcerer Supreme, or the most powerful magic user on Earth. He's Earth's go-to defense against any sort of mystic or magical attacks, but all that would change after attacked by Shumagorath. Shumagorath is this weird eyeball tentacle monster that kind of looks like somebody's terrible creation out of the first couple levels of Spore. Despite his looks, Shumagorath is actually insanely powerful. He's the ruler of hundreds of alternate dimensions, he can shapeshift, and he's pretty much invincible. Setting his sight on Earth, Shumagorath decides to invade the mind of the Ancient One. Now, the Ancient One is smart and understands what's happening, so he encourages Doctor Strange to destroy the part of his brain that contains the ego, which Shumagorath was also in. For some reason, this stops Shumagorath, and the world is saved. Unfortunately, this also kills the Ancient One. This allows Doctor Strange to take up the mantle of Sorcerer Supreme. He is now the de facto magical protector of Earth. And he'll continue having this title for pretty much the entire run of his comics from that point till now. There was a couple times where he gave up the title, most notably between 1992 and 1995, but for the most part, he stayed the Sorcerer Supreme. As the Sorcerer Supreme and most powerful magic user in the Marvel Universe, Doctor Strange is also part of the Illuminati, which is this elite group of leaders of the different teams in the Marvel Universe. and some of the strongest characters. This includes Professor Xavier, Black Bolt, Namor, Iron Man, and Mr. Fantastic. So all these strong characters are working together to kind of dictate how their teams work together and try to stop future calamities from happening. Now, this doesn't always work, and they usually end up making more trouble than they're good for, including sending the Hulk into space at one point, and he comes back and just destroys everything. So, good job, guys. As Earth's most powerful magician, Doctor Strange obviously has a lot of spells and abilities in his arsenal. Now, all these spells come from the Book of Vishanti, this indestructible book that contains all the white magic spells in the Marvel Universe. Side note, there's also a dark version of the book that's called the Darkhold that contains all the black magic in the Marvel Universe, also indestructible. No one knows who wrote the Book of Vishanti, but it's named after three deities, Agamotto, Ashtar, and Hogarth, and these collectively make up the Vishanti. So not only does Doctor Strange get some of these spells from this book, but he also gets some of his weird catchphrases like the hoary hordes of Hogarth and stuff like that. So for most people, it sounds like a bunch of weird gibberish, but it makes sense to people who have read the book or for readers who know where they come from. Along with the book, Doctor Strange also primarily relies on three artifacts, two of which actually come from Agamotto himself. The Orb of Agamotto allows Doctor Strange to see any magic that's happening in the world, gives him a location, and lets him see actually what's happening. Usually it's pretty foolproof, but there are some really powerful evil magicians that are able to block it in order to hide where they are or what they're doing. Bonus, the orb actually also showed up in the first Thor movie in Odin's Vault, where we also saw one of the Infinity Gauntlets, so a little Easter egg there for you. The second of Doctor Strange's Agamotto items is the Eye of Agamotto, and now this is the necklace that you'll probably see him wearing in the movie based off the posters and trailers. It's actually, the eye is actually inside the necklace, but usually it's just referring to the necklace in general. This allows Doctor Strange to see through magical illusions and stuff like that, so people like Loki can't get the upper hand. So I said the Eye of Agamotto is usually referred to as the necklace, but there is an actual eyeball in there, and that's what eventually, sometimes it does come out, he pulls it out, but usually he can just tap into it while wearing the full necklace. Now, a little sidebar here, it's important to note that the Eye of Agamotto could actually play a much larger role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Up until this point, the different Infinity Stones have begun to spell out Thanos. T for Tesseract, H is undiscovered so far, A is for Ether, which when you hear it doesn't sound right, but it actually does have an A at the beginning of it. N is undiscovered, O is the orb found in Guardians of the Galaxy, and S is the scepter seen in the first Avengers movie and also Avengers 2. So we're missing H and N. Now, it's been speculated what these could be for a while, and remember, this is all fan theory, but people have been trying to figure out what H and N could be if it does end up spelling Thanos after all. I've proposed about a year ago, what if the N stands for necklace, which an amulet in a way is a necklace. So what if the I ends up being one of the Infinity Stones? Like I said, just a little sidebar, something I thought about, and I really like the idea of it. So who knows? We could see Doctor Strange play a much bigger role than we thought later on. The final tool in Doctor Strange's arsenal, or his final primary tool, is his cloak, actually. And while you could say, oh, that's a really cool fashion statement, it's actually called the Cloak of Levitation, and it allows the user to levitate and fly. So, not the most creative name, but it looks cool, especially when it's got the cool hooky thing that some people draw on it. We're not going to really see that in the movie, unfortunately. So while flying is the thing that Cloak is really known for, given the name, it also allows some other useful abilities, I guess. It allows from some physical and magical protection as a kind of shield, and it also can shapeshift of its own free will, and it can actually turn into other pieces of clothing. So if Doctor Strange needs to blend in, say he's at a ball or something, I need a suit. The cloak can wrap itself around him and turn into a suit. So he pretty much just needs to wear that all the time. That's it. While most people are familiar with the red cape, as it's been kind of his signature look for a while, in 1963 when Doctor Strange first came out, the cloak was actually blue and changed just about a year later to its current and signature red. The cloak was originally given to Doctor Strange from the Ancient One as a sort of prize for beating Dormammu, and he's had it ever since. Now let's move on to what's going to happen with Doctor Strange in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This actually won't be the first time that Doctor Strange has appeared in live action adaptation. Now don't worry, you haven't missed him in any other Marvel movies. He actually had his own movie back in 1978. Originally done by CBS, it was a made-for-TV movie that aired, and it was supposed to kind of pave the way for a CBS TV series, but it never got off the ground. There wasn't really good reaction to it. Good news though, if you want to really go watch the movie, the DVD release is this week, and it'll be the first time it's ever out on DVD, so you don't have to go hunt down a copy on VHS or hunt down a VHS player and hook it up anymore. You can just go watch the DVD version. Now, what will be a first for Doctor Strange in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that this is the first time we are seeing magic. And you could say, but what about Thor? He shoots lightning bolts and flies around with a magic hammer. I mean, yeah, that's true, but he's also a god. So, I mean, like, is it really magic or just like innate ability? I mean, yeah, the hammer's magical and came from the center of the sun, blah, blah, blah. But, like, this is a human being using magic for the first time without any sort of genetic enhancement or anything like that, like Scarlet Witch. So like Guardians of the Galaxy introduced the audiences to the cosmic side of Marvel, Doctor Strange is going to introduce the audience to the mystic side. And that's cool for audiences because we could see more characters from the mystic side come out later on, even in their own movies or just as cameos, which is great. But it also gives the heroes and the Avengers specifically something else to wrap their heads around. You gotta remember, just a few in-universe years ago, aliens were coming out of the sky and attacking New York. So now they have this guy who can just do magic, and for people like Tony Stark, who's a scientist, and even Bruce Banner, who's a scientist, they have to wrap their head around the idea of magic, which is possible because of all the stuff they've dealt with, but just something new to toss in. And Doctor Strange will be in Avengers Infinity War. That is confirmed, so we will see him interact with the Avengers, which is awesome. Alright guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching the first episode of What's Up With. Hopefully you know a little bit more about Doctor Strange after watching me ramble for however long this video ended up being. Check back in a couple weeks, I'll have a new episode up detailing something else about pop culture. And make sure to check out later this week, we will have a review of Doctor Strange up. We're all really excited to see it. It should be really cool. So definitely check that out and come back. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe down below if you like what you see. Do you want to know something? Do you want a history lesson or a lore lesson on something? Let me know in the comments. I'll see if I can work it into the schedule. We've got a GoFundMe going on right now to get us better equipment, including better microphones, lighting, camera, the works. You can go check out gofundme.com/funsubtrendy. We got a bunch of really cool incentives there. You donate, we give you stuff, you give us money to make more better videos. Everybody wins. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Hit me up on Twitter if you got any questions, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.